William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
Good afternoon and welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet and I'm here in the studio with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink. Our guest today is Kendall Scudder. He is running for Senate District number 2 from East Dallas, Mesquite, Garland, Seagoville, Rockwall, Sulphur Springs, Bonham. I pretty much got
the list goes on.
You have like 9 counties, something like that. And Kendall was raised by 2 moms. Now, both of you know how I hate to bring that up because, you know, the other side, they like to talk about how terrible it is when somebody's raised by 2 moms. And then, so we had to do studies and we found that actually a kid who's raised by 2 moms is usually at a great advantage. And then second would be a kid raised by 2 dads. And then people who are raised by opposite-sex parents. And I hate to put down opposite-sex parenting because, you know, I'm a product of that.
Oh, me too.
And I turned out pretty messed up.
I don't know if we want you to be our exemplar.
Okay. Patti was raised by opposite-sex parents. Yep. Who raised her in Libya. Okay, so maybe we can have a good example here. Lerone was raised by opposite-sex parents.
And now I am in a same-sex relationship raising a kid.
Raising a kid who should turn out much better than you. Anyway, Kendall, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's get the 2 moms thing out of the way.
Yeah.
It was a really exciting life you had growing up with them, right?
Unfortunately, for people who host radio shows, it was incredibly boring. You know,
But you were always doing same-sex mom stuff?
You know, our family had a small business off the square. Both of my moms worked multiple jobs. You know, we just tried to feed the family and, you know, make sure we got to college. You know, the hardest part about having 2 moms isn't having 2 moms. It's the people who have a problem with you having 2 moms.
Did you ever have any kinds of problems like that?
Sure. But, you know, at the end of the day, the community of Sulphur Springs is a wonderful community, just full of great folks that all work together to make their community strong. I mean, it's very apparent when you go to Sulphur Springs just how much passion people have for their community there. And, you know, it takes a village, right? And the people in Sulphur Springs, you know, made a great impact on my life too. And I am who I am and standing where I am today because of my moms, the teachers who helped get me through school, and the people of Sulphur Springs who helped get me here. So.
And people didn't object to that business, that gay bar that they owned on the in Sulphur Springs?
Well, no. So my mother owned a yoga studio off the square there, and she had a string of chemical dependency counseling clinics in Northeast Texas. So, you know, and my other mother, she was a paramedic, and you know, she actually was in a tragic incident when we were younger, where she was hit by a drunk driver while she was driving her ambulance and ended up breaking both of her legs. You know,
oh my gosh!
In service to her community. You know, our family was just like everyone else, and you know, maybe Sulphur Springs was a little ahead of the curve there. I think they got it. You know, there were a couple of folks who didn't, but that's okay. You know, you know, we are who we are today.
Believe it or not, even here in Dallas, there are some people who don't get Patti.
Well, there's lots of people in Dallas that don't get Patti.
Anyway, Kendall, you are running for Senate District number 2, running against Bob Hall. He's the incumbent.
And an author of the bathroom bill.
The Senate version of the bathroom bill.
He was the author of a litany of really bad bills. He authored a bill to eliminate school breakfasts. He authored a bill to eliminate ESL in public schools. He was, you know, it just goes on, and it shouldn't surprise anyone that the guy's never successfully passed a bill before. Knock on wood. Let's keep it that way.
Sounds like he doesn't want to pass a bill. I mean, really?
So you're for or against education?
So, well, here, you know, I actually decided to run for the Texas Senate when Bob Hall signed on as a sponsor for the school voucher bill. To me, I believe I'm from a rural community. School vouchers do nothing for us. They don't help.
Why not?
people
What
that are
about all those
crazy.
good private schools you got to go to?
You mean all the private schools his donor owns? His donors own? You know, to me, school vouchers are a thinly veiled attempt to privatize our public schools and tear them apart brick by brick. They discriminate against rural kids and kids of color and kids with disabilities, kids from working families. They have no academic accountability, no financial transparency with our tax dollars. And it's just an entitlement program for rich folks. And people in rural areas get that. I think people in urban areas get that. That's why they stopped calling them vouchers and started calling it school choice, you know?
Yeah, because the idea of choice works when they're talking about women's health, right?
Oh,
yeah, that's what they're always for, is
right,
choice.
right.
I hadn't thought about it, just how much it discriminates against rural kids, but it does, because there aren't those charter schools and private schools and other types of schools. There isn't that choice for those kids. It's just taking money out of the public school systems there.
Yeah, I mean, let's say that the government gives you a voucher to take your kid to a private school, and you live in a place like Cooper, which is in our district. The school voucher doesn't even cover what the average cost of a private school is, so you could only use the voucher if you could afford the massive overhead costs above that voucher. But then let's say that you could afford that, you don't even have anywhere to take your voucher. All your school is going to get is less funds with no solutions. And our schools are facing enough challenges as it is, with this overburdening of standardized tests in our schools. You know, we don't let our teachers teach like they should be able to teach. The crisis that's happening with our teacher retirement program right now is, on its best day, immoral, and on its worst day, borderline criminal. We have enough to deal with without school vouchers creating even more problems for us.
Even if we're going beyond school vouchers, okay, so we have the public schools. They're well funded the way they are, aren't they?
No, they're not.
And teachers,
a good joke.
Yeah.
teachers in Oklahoma, apparently, going by the news up in Oklahoma, they all want to come to Texas.
Well,
What does that say about Oklahoma schools? I mean,
adjusted for inflation, since 2008, Texans have actually seen a decrease of over 16% for public school funding. And if you look at your tax bill, we all just paid our taxes, right? And you saw your ISD taxes were through the roof. And it's not because we are giving too much money to our schools. It's because Austin isn't paying their fair share. In the mid 1900s, 80% of school funding was coming from Austin. And in the bill that just passed, it's hovering around 35%. If you get rid of charter schools in that equation, it's 31%. And it's not because we have less students. It's not, it may be because we're not paying our teachers, but it's the reason that Austin isn't paying their fair share in is because they're kicking that bucket down to our local school districts, and they have to do the responsible thing and pay for our schools. And so if we fully funded our public schools from Austin, you could really have an opportunity for property tax relief on the local level.
It seems like every year, every legislative session, what follows is the cuts are in the billions for public education in our state, and not just once, but like probably the last 3 or 4 sessions have been massive cuts. These aren't just shifting dollars around in a budget. This is massive cuts to our kids, and to me, that's as many people say, your budget reflects your values. And it's obvious to me Texas doesn't value our kids and our kids' education. They don't value women.
Well,
Bob Hall's the prime example of that. Victoria Niave did the bill that would start catching us up and crowdsource the rape kits that are desperately untested in the thousands.
Years
backlog in Texas, and if men were getting raped, we'd have these rape kits would be tested every when they arrived at the lab.
Right.
But it's women, so it's years behind. And she got a voice vote in the House and essentially a voice vote in the Senate, except for, Bob Hall.
The only guy on either side.
Yeah, voted against it. So
we always balance our budget on the backs of our kids and at the expense of their futures.
Well, they don't vote, and when they get out and vote, we'll start listening to it.
Right. Well, don't tell me what your values are. Show me your budget, and I'll tell you what your values are. Right. The money is available. It's about what do they feel is the most important. There was a discussion this year about making feminine hygiene products tax-free, because I think we can all agree that they are a medical necessity, right? And it didn't even get a committee hearing, but you know what did pass? That it is now tax-free on baked goods consumed with a fork. That made it to a committee hearing, and it passed.
Get out of here.
Yeah, it made it. So, it's about what are your values, what's important to you.
And they cut the fee, the license fee to get a concealed handgun license.
Well, sure.
Dramatically.
There are massive corporate tax loopholes that are just outrageous. High-yielding natural gas fields are actually get a tax break, whereas regular producing natural gas fields do not. You close some of these ridiculous tax loopholes to give everybody a fair playing field. You're looking at $5.6 billion that we could invest in our schools. We could try to work to secure teacher retirement programs, but what's more important to them is giving tax breaks to their wealthy oil tycoons out in West Texas that are bankrolling their campaigns, and that's unfortunate for working folks like us.
Well, if maybe we figured out a way to funnel some of those billions of dollars to certain people, they'd push for it.
I think that's what the vouchers are about, right?
Oh, okay. So I guess I'm for vouchers then. You have me so confused.
So what do you the people of Sulphur Springs think of your candidacy now? They watched you grow up.
Yeah.
You.
It's just kind of strange and surreal, by most accounts, I'm the youngest nominee for the Texas Senate in about 132 years since Sam Houston's son, and so a lot of them. Because of how young I am, I still know a lot of folks there, even though I left to go to college. And so all my teachers are still there. They're still teaching at the schools up there. And
cool.
So when I get to go into town, it's just a great experience. I always make a point to go to the Dairy Queen I worked at when I was in high school. Every time I go in there, my campaign manager always laughs at me because of the amount of ice cream I eat. It's just really great memories. I love that community. And I tell people all the time, I would love to live in Sulphur Springs, but there aren't economic opportunities for people like me. We've got to find ways to invigorate these rural economies so that folks can get good paying jobs and we can sustain those communities.
Well, one good way is to put tariffs on some of the products that they produce.
A lot of manufacturing actually in Sulphur Springs. They did a great job of diversifying their economy there, and when the recession hit, Sulphur Springs didn't feel quite the blow that a lot of communities did because of the way that they diversified their economy.
What types of industry?
So you have groups like Ocean Spray that's there. You have valve manufacturers. Lots of dairy and agriculture is there. Grocery supply is headquartered there. A lot of trucking agencies are headquartered there. As you go around Sulphur Springs, you see very diverse industry. They were real smart. These financial incentives that governments pay out for retail aren't economic solutions. They are corporate welfare. If you're going to be incentivizing industry, you should be incentivizing development, science, research, manufacturing, things that create good paying jobs, hopefully union jobs, right? That allow people to feed their families. You don't give Walmart a shit ton of money and let them run all your small mom and pop businesses out using their tax dollars, right? And then when the town falls apart, the Walmart leaves, right?
Right.
But Sulphur Springs, I think they did it right. You've got a great group of folks there with good heads on their shoulders, and unfortunately, that hasn't been the case in a lot of the communities in our district. And so economic development's a huge deal for us.
And what are some of the issues that you hear directly from the people of Sulphur Springs? It's like, we want this education. What are some of the issues that they say are important to them?
The number one issue everyone talks to me about is public schools, right? that is, and the TRS, teacher retirement system.
It's interesting because we've had a number of candidates on, a number of people who've already been elected to their office, but all of them are talking about when they come in, we say, okay, what are your issues? Number one, education. Like Julie Johnson, when she was on, what is she talking about? Education. When, Jessica Gonzalez, who beat Roberto Alonso, how did she beat him? Education. Everybody's talking about education as if we need kids who know how to read.
Man, isn't Julie Johnson great?
Yeah,
she's awesome. Yeah.
I adore her, and every time I get the opportunity to interact with her, it just reminds me of how well served we would be with Julie Johnson in the house. But yeah, public schools are the number one issue that everyone talks to me about. But, outside of Sulphur Springs, we have smaller communities like Cooper or Emory. People tell me constantly access to high-speed internet is a huge issue for them. In 2016, 85% of homework required internet to complete it. And imagine trying to start a small business when you can't swipe a credit card, right? I met a woman in Delta County that pays $120 a month for dial-up internet. Yeah.
That's criminal.
I know.
Dial-up. Oh my gosh!
Well, I didn't even know dial-up was still around.
I just recently picked the dial-up numbers for my old ISP out of my phone. I'm like, I'll never need that again. And I'm like, dial-up.
It's wild.
Wow.
So
you might, Patty, if you move out to Sulphur Springs.
I will.
Well, I met a woman in Emory who pays for 2 internet providers because she has a business and can't afford to have her internet down. And so when this one goes down, she just switches onto this one. Over $250 a month.
Wow.
And, they don't want it for free. Like, we're working folks, right? They just want to be able to pay for it like everyone else can. And it's silly that in 2018 we're talking about people having access to internet. And the TARP funds back in 2009 ran those fibers out to Point, Texas. We could do public-private partnerships that could really generate some revenues for those private companies and could provide a great service for people. But just this week we saw Bob Hall send an email out saying that it's time to end public-private partnerships. I mean...
good, then we're going to get rid of private prisons?
Yeah. Don't hold your breath, Patty.
I think she should hold her breath. We're taking a break. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink. Our guest is Kendall Scudder. He is running for Senate District number 2 in East Dallas and about 8 or 9 counties to the east of that. We'll be back with more right after this.
This is Rollins Gilliland, and I'm listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3. And darn glad to be doing it.
And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink. Our guest is Kendall Scudder. He's running for Senate District number 2, and he has the distinction of being the first state candidate to be hacked by the Russians. And this is an exclusive on KNON because you just found it this morning.
Well, we found it this weekend. We did. And just clarification, it is apparent Russian hacking that has not
Oh, yes. We wouldn't want to accuse them of something that we can't.
It hasn't been solidly proven yet, right?
Right.
Well, it's scary. It's an assault on our democracy. And so basically, late Friday night, we've been having some issues with our website, but it came to a head. So on Friday night, we shut it down, started looking into the files. We saw Russian language files embedded in our server. We've been in contact with the FBI. We've reported we are complying with any federal investigation that we're requested to comply with. And then, this morning we found a second breach on a different system. So, to me, that indicates that we're being targeted. And
with ties to WikiLeaks, with ties to Julian Assange, you said.
It's possible. It's nothing really, in my opinion, to joke about. It's an assault by a foreign adversary on our elections. And I wish that we could step up and do something about it, but it seems like we're sitting on our hands on issues that are this important. But, if a bunch of communists think that playing computer games is going to knock us down, they hadn't met me yet.
Right. So what you did, you reported it to the FBI.
Right.
And it's not a matter, this isn't something that your opponent did.
No.
But it is something Republicans in general are not taking seriously.
in fairness, we just sent this out and no one has had the opportunity to
I don't mean
react to
yours.
it.
I mean backing
yeah.
of the last election.
There's an enormous amount of money that the State Department has, the United States State Department has, to fight this this egregious breach of our democracy, and they haven't spent a dime, not one thin dime, against to say, well, it happened in the 2016 election, but what are we doing about it going forward? Because they're going to try and hit every other additional election in the future.
Well, as far as I know, we're the first legislative seat here in Texas that this has happened to. I don't know if it's happening to other campaigns, and maybe they just don't know it yet, or who knows? I mean, but we've got to get serious about this, guys, because American democracy is under attack, and this is the war zone of the 21st century. It's the internet, and we cannot sit on our hands and allow foreign adversaries to attack our democracy. We can't do it.
It's one thing if you lose and Bob Hall wins because more people voted for him.
Sure.
And you both did your best to get out your vote, and he wins. That's the way it works sometimes. But when we have outsiders coming in and
sabotaging,
that's you wouldn't want to know that your opponent lost because he was sabotaged.
I wouldn't.
You want a good, solid, clean win.
Look, we don't know if these attacks are helping or supposed to help us or hurt us because we don't speak Russian and all the files are in Russian. But it doesn't matter, right? No matter what happens, when you find out that there is someone trying to tamper with elections, you report it to the FBI. End of story. And that's what we've done. We're here to comply with any concerns that anyone has. And we're going to be open and transparent about this entire process. We've shut our website down. People can still access our campaign through our social media pages, Kendall Scudder for Texas Senate on Facebook, or on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat at Kendall Scudder. You can still donate at ActBlue if you'd like to, but just for now, our website's down, and we will have another one up. It will be bigger, it will be stronger, it will be better than the last one was, because that's how Americans work. We are resilient, and we are going to move forward.
And another frequent guest of Lambda Weekly, Glenn Maxey, who's the legislative director at the Texas Democratic Party in Austin, also encountered Russians during the registration process for the county and Senate district conventions that occurred a couple of weeks ago across the state. They encountered 48, what they're calling the Texas 48, 48 email addresses that are legitimate email addresses that they were tested and such, but they're based in Russia. And they tried to register. You have to chase down each person who registers to make sure they're a valid voter in the state of Texas and in the county that they're wanting to be a delegate to, and that they voted in the primary. It's just party rules. And so it's a routine thing they do. They get all the names and they cross-check them, and here are a whole 48 of them trying to register to attend the Travis County Democratic Convention.
It occurs to me that one of the reasons that you did catch them is that it was in Russian. Bob Hall tried to eliminate English as a second language here in Texas. It's a good thing that...
right. Well, look, I believe that Texans want a senator with guts that they can trust. And whether it is Russian hacking or it is dark money interests funding our campaign, our opponents, I'm not going to stop fighting for the people of Texas until I feel that open, honest government has been restored in Austin, until we have fully funded our public schools and we have killed school vouchers.
And whichever one of you wins, I want to know that you won because you got the most votes freely and fairly.
For sure. And, I'll just say, Bob and I have a very cordial relationship. We've met each other several times. I think his wife is wonderful. I've met her several times too, and one of the first things she said to me the first time I met her was, this campaign, politics is what we do, but it doesn't have to be who we are, right? And so while we can have political back and forths, they are wonderful human beings. Like, as people, I have some sincere disagreements with his ideology and some of
everything you've talked about are things that he's sponsored, not him. It's not he's this blah blah blah. It's he sponsored this particular bill. You are not for that.
Correct.
He's even sponsored a bill that says that Texas doesn't have to abide by the rulings of the United States Supreme Court. if they conflict with what's in the Texas Constitution, which is just crap. I mean, it would never sustain the light of day.
Right.
That's why he can't pass a bill, because he's living over here in the far extreme right, so, putting forth these proposed bills, including the bathroom bill, that are just preposterous to sane Texans.
He authored a bill that would eliminate any protected status that is not already federally protected. It would eliminate any non-discrimination ordinances. Now, my day job, I work in housing. So where that originally made my head go was, wow, this bill that Bob Hall just wrote would have eliminated housing protections for veterans. Right? Because there are housing protections that say if you are deployed, you're not held liable for your lease contract. This would have eliminated that. They're not a federally protected class. Would have eliminated housing protections for students. It's just piss poor public policy. And, we have got to send people to Austin that are interested in making government work for working people, not people that are interested in defunding it so that they can point to it and show you how much it doesn't work. That's not serving any of us, and it definitely isn't serving people who live in rural areas.
You need to send people there who are going to make it work better.
Right.
One of the things on one of your platform items is ethics reform.
Right.
So you're for ethics or against?
I'm a big fan of ethics. There are a couple of issues that I think are significant concern in Texas. A lot of people don't know that in Texas there are no caps on political contributions. So if anyone out there wants to write me a check for $600,000, they could do it. And please do.
Josh,
right?
You get my check.
But understand that I'm going to take that money and go to Austin to make sure you can't do that anymore. We have got to put caps on political contributions in Texas. A lot of people are also not aware that there are 80 appointees by Governor Abbott that have donated over $15 million at total to the campaign. We're not getting the best and the brightest. We're getting the richest. There should be caps on financial contributions for gubernatorial appointees.
Mm-hmm. If donated, pay to play.
Sure. If you've donated more than $1,000, you're not eligible for an appointment. I think that's fair. That, and then, of course, we've got to get fair districts. I think that's an ethics issue. This district is half Dallas County, half 8 other counties. And if you have an issue like water rights, you need to know that your senator is representing your community and not having to straddle 2 different areas, right? You protect communities when you give them a district that represents them. And I'm sick of these politicians picking who their voters are. It's 2018. Let's do these with the logarithms and not even look at political data, right? Like, there's no reason to do it.
It's going to take the Supreme Court, a really nonpartisan Supreme Court, to rule that a computer is going to start, like in Texas, in El Paso, and the first however many people are in that congressional district, 800,000 people or so. The first 800,000, that's District 1. District 2 is the next. And the only way that the lines move a little bit from just moving straight across the state is to keep neighborhoods together.
Sure.
But so, the right wing, they're using computers too. They're using it to skew.
And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you start at one end and you start moving east, or you start up in Texarkana and you start moving west. And the only adjustments are keeping neighborhoods together.
It seems to me that the problems always come up when we start letting the politicians in the room, right? like why are all of these politicians crafting all this education policy and not letting educators and school administrators in the room when they're doing it, right? It's the same thing with these districts. You start putting politicians in the room, they all start working for their own best interest, figuring out how they can raise money and help their donors, and they're not focused on us.
Well, and like Patti, you said, computers are doing it now. A judge can still review those lines, and yes, some adjustments can be made to certain lines, as long as the rule is because you're trying to keep neighborhoods together.
And I believe it was in the state of Michigan. I may be wrong. It might be Wisconsin. But the people there were so disgusted by the egregiously gerrymandered districts across their state for every purpose, whether it's their state legislative districts or their congressional districts and such. They began this thing that said regular citizens will a petition to put it on the ballot to say that regular citizens will decide what those lines are and draw those districts in the future. And they did it pretty stealthily. They hung out at rest areas all over the state and waited for cars to drive up, and they offered them free coffee, like most states do at their rest areas. And they got the signatures they needed. It was just regular people spending their day, a Saturday, at a rest area, and they got it on the ballot, and it passed.
Well, of course it passed.
Wow.
So
Who likes these districts? Nobody.
We need to do something
the politicians
like
love it, and the donors really love it.
I know a bunch of politicians who are not happy with these districts, that they'd much rather serve a neighborhood, a community.
Well, and here's the thing. These districts create extremists. Like, if you look at government and you think, man, it has gotten just whack jobs all over the place, it's because they have to pander to their base to win a primary. And if you had more purple districts, you'd have more scared politicians. And when you got more scared politicians, you got a better government.
Isn't that the truth? That is really so true.
Your district actually is not that badly gerrymandered because it's 8 counties. So they've kept counties together at
The
least.
Dallas portion is significantly gerrymandered. But,
You could take, and what's interesting to me is that for a state Senate seat, it covers more people, more population than a congressional seat.
right.
Right, and the reason for that is we have 31 state senators, but we have 35 or 36 Congress people from the state.
So chopping Texas up in 31 ways gives you more people for
and
each
chopping it up
district.
36 ways.
But now I had such a great point, and I have lost my point on the air.
I'm sorry,
We felt
Patty.
it, though. We felt it.
Oh, I found it again. Thanks for feeling it, because I got it back.
Okay.
But the population in this little sliver of East Dallas County, population-wise and vote-wise, is about the same if you add all the other counties up together. So it's not trivial that we have this little sliver of East Dallas. And where I live, Kendall would be my state senator when elected. But my precinct's like on the very edge, the very, very edge.
Right.
And Bob Hall doesn't care about us.
Well,
We're an urban community, and he doesn't care about us.
what's really interesting, I mean, I hate to say inflammatory things like that, but I mean, you're right, Patty. If you look at where he even put his offices when he won, they're in Rockwall, Greenville, and in Canton. Half the population of his district is in Dallas County. Why does he not have an office in Mesquite? And he held a series of town halls. Kudos to Bob. He is still holding town halls, and well, he hasn't, I guess, in over a year now, but did host them until people started showing up. But when people in the Dallas town hall started asking him questions, he said, well, maybe that's what happens in your area of the district, but in my area of the district, it's like, buddy, this all is your district. Like, there is no your area of the district, my area of the district. You represent this whole district. You represent people that live in Old Lake Highlands. You represent people that live in Cooper. You represent people that live in Balch Springs.
And the real thing is you represent the Democrats in your district and the Republicans in your district once you're elected. Like Danica Rome said beautifully when she was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates. They asked her to say something about her opponent, who was the bathroom bill person, who billed himself as the most homophobic person in the state. She said, I don't say derogatory things about my constituents, and he's my constituent now. That's the way
brilliant.
it is.
I think that point is lost on a lot of politicians, that once you win, you represent everyone, right? Not just your party.
I think the difference, if you had to say what the biggest difference between me and Bob Hall is that, East Texas is my home. I was born and raised in Northeast Texas, and
By 2 moms.
right, and
Boring story. We're not going to go over it again.
I'm just saying that the future of this area means a lot to me. It's my home. Bob moved here 5 years ago, and we're glad to have him. And he can walk around in his Texas flag shirts all day long, but he does not represent the Texas values that I was raised with.
Absolutely. I spoke with him and his staff about issues that we're encountering in Dallas and where I live, and when they found out where I live, they didn't care. It's like, you have to move on. I've got to speak to some other people. You know, that's not the way to represent things. So we need a new district. We do need new lines that keep communities of interest together. But we also need representation that recognizes that every one of us is important. You know, we have these citizen legislators. I mean, this is, you know, you think of the post-Revolutionary War and the first Congress, and people sent up and they got together and they elected somebody. You go up and you represent us, and then you come back and somebody else will do it, you know, at another time. And we've lost that spirit in our state and across the country, I think. I think that we need to get it back. We could have so much better world if we did.
What I tell people all the time is that, you know, you're not going to agree with everything I do, and I'm not going to agree with every opinion you have, and that's okay. That's how our system's designed. Talk to me. You know, I want to hear from you. We've been going all over this district nonstop, and I've been learning a lot from people.
Because we don't agree doesn't mean I don't want to hear what you have to say.
Let's have a dialogue, and let's work together. Democrats and Republicans are not enemies, right?
We need to take a break, but before I do, one other issue, women's health. And let me remind you, you have two moms. For it or against it?
There has been quite the assault on women's health. You can see that in the spike in the maternal mortality rate. It's, you know, there's a great group called East Dallas Persistent Women that did a study over the Healthy Texas Women program and found that a lot of the facilities that say they provide those services don't. I mean, it's
like it's a Subway sandwich shop.
Yeah,
not a doctor.
I mean, it was outrageous. You know, this is about making sure that we're expanding life. The life expectancy has gone down on people lately. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's 2018. We've got to be more supportive of science and medicine and research and development and making sure that people have access to health care. You know, it is scary for people who have to decide whether or not they're going to put their kid in ballet lessons or go to the doctor. That's outrageous.
We've had guests on from Congress who said it used to just be difficult deciding which priorities were important. Eddie Bernice Johnson, she sits on the science committee. She said, now we have to decide whether science actually exists. So we have to take a break. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. We'll be back with more right after this.
Hi, this is Valletta Lil, and I listen to Lambda Weekly. I hope that you will too.
This is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet. We're here with Kendall Scudder. He's running for Senate District 2. He just said, I said 3 seconds. He said, oh, you're good at that. It tells me on the computer screen. I don't just guess how much longer we have. Lerone Landis, the late Patti Fink are here with us. Patti, in Alaska.
Yes, in Alaska, the city of Anchorage, which is not the capital. The capital is Juneau, but the city of Anchorage,
which is the biggest city,
right?
Yeah.
Recently had a vote for the first time in the country, a so-called bathroom bill that basically discriminates against transgender people and gender non-conforming people. Was put to a vote of the people in what was called Proposition 1, and it was defeated at the ballot box.
First time.
The first time.
Anywhere in the country.
First time it's been tried to pass through votes directly to the people, and it's the first time it's failed. And they also re-elected the mayor who passed the non-discrimination ordinance that protects transgender people in their city. So I thought that was a really great story, and I think that legislators across the state and across the country should be paying attention.
Now, Kendall,
because we went through this already with one session with the so-called bathroom bill.
Kendall, you had during the break a good comment. It's also the state that elected Sarah Palin. It's the state where the Tea Party movement had one of its big starts. I mean, you can't pin it to one place, but she had a lot to do with it. But
well, yeah, I'm mad at Sarah Palin because she saw the Russians doing all this from her house and she didn't say nothing about it.
About the hacking on his website? Right. She saw it. So we were talking a little bit about your website, and database has been hacked. You've reported it. You're putting up a new website to replace what was hacked into. What else are you going to do about it? Just who knows?
Obviously, we're going to have to start spending some money on cybersecurity, right? Which is not where you want to spend your campaign funds. we're just going to have to keep raising money and doing the best we can. Our opponent is bankrolled by this group called Empower Texans out in West Texas, which is a bunch of old tycoons. And just in his primary, he got $750,000 from that one group. It's outrageous.
And they're way right wing. They're super right wing.
94% of his money has come from outside of our district. So we aren't going to have the money he has, and so to have to sink more money in things like cybersecurity, it's very stressful for me as the candidate to think about. But you know what? It's what we're going to have to do. So folks that want to help us out with that, I'd really appreciate it. But on the issue of the bathroom bill, there's an issue beyond just transgender issues that I think people really need to look at. If you are a parent who has a child with a disability, and you have to assist that child in a public restroom, things like the bathroom bill should grossly offend you, right? Because it turns your family into a criminal.
Right.
If you are a mom, like I had two moms, and sometimes I would go with my mother into the women's restroom because she didn't want me using a public restroom by myself. If you are a mom who has ever taken your son into the restroom with you, your son is now a criminal with this bill, right?
Yep.
She should have stopped by the time you were 16, though.
Should have. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But no, you're right.
You've done that.
I have an opposite gender child, and took it to the restaurant with me for the longest time.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, bills like this, even what they are intending to do isn't getting done. Like, it's just poor public policy. People that are not academically curious, they're not interested in good public policy, they just are ideologues pushing their agenda through any means necessary. Our communities deserve better than that.
And they don't even consider the consequences.
Right.
And what really chaps me is that as in Anchorage and here, they refer to it as the women's privacy bill, the women's and to protect women and children. That's not even consistent.
It's not.
They don't care about little boys.
Exactly.
They don't care about other men. I mean, on their own argument. It just sounds so stupid. But it's the way they function.
I will say, though, we've been campaigning for 15 months now, and I have not gotten a single question about the bathroom bill. That is not what people in Senate District 2 are interested in.
Who cares about it?
They want to know.
That's really interesting. I'm glad you said that.
They want to know how we are going to fully fund our public schools in a manner that provides property tax relief for working families. They want to figure out how we're going to kill school vouchers. I've gotten more questions about things like recreational marijuana than I have gotten about bathrooms.
Even Bob Hall, I got his update, his last update, in the mail, and I scoured it. It's got all kinds of topics. It's this big thing that unfolds and keeps unfolding, and not one mention of the bathroom bill.
Because it's just not an issue.
Exactly.
There has never been one of these incidents
Never.
that they're trying to legislate against. Do you know the one good outcome of the bathroom bills around the country? I was traveling this week. I've noticed more. What did they call them at Fort Lauderdale Airport? They called it something like public assistance restrooms or something. So that, and the idea is if you need to assist somebody else in a bathroom, well, here's the third bathroom. It's for you. It's a nice big private bathroom with a changing station, with a, with plenty of room. If you're going in with a wheelchair, if you're transgender and just don't want to deal with the nonsense, here it is. So that's actually a good effect that it's having, because more people will be accommodated that way.
And I think people will appreciate that. Aaron and I went to Canada last year on vacation, and everywhere we went, I took photos of this. You know how in the States here, not at KNON, because we have a unisex bathroom here at the station, but elsewhere in public, you'll see a photo of, or a representation of a woman and a child and a baby, because they want to indicate that there's a changing room. But if you go over to the men's sign, there's a representation of a man and a boy, but there's no changing station. But in Canada, the changing station is on all the men's signs too.
But you know what I've been noticing? I've been noticing more changing stations in men's rooms lately.
Yeah, they have.
DFW Airport has them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So.
I think it's awesome.
It is awesome.
It's just the fact of the matter is, every session, these extremists like Bob Hall, they go down to Austin and they push bathroom bills and they come back and brag to you about all the money they cut out of the budget. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, our bridges and roads are falling apart, our hospitals are getting unaccredited, our schools are significantly underfunded, and our taxes have been going up every single year. So why the hell would you send any of them back in the first place?
Mm-hmm. And people aren't getting a living wage.
Right.
People who are working 40 hours a week and sometimes 60, 80 hours a week are not making enough to live on and feed their families.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy.
We were talking before the break about ethics reform, and the one thing we were talking about was redistricting. That it shouldn't be these gerrymandered districts. Like one of the districts, in one of the congressional districts, starts in San Antonio and goes all the way to El Paso, hundreds of miles. It's a ridiculous district. It in no way, the people who are in the San Antonio part of the district, you can't reasonably be representing them, and the people in El Paso in the same way. What are some of the other ethics issues, though, that you'd like to see?
Well, like I said, redistricting is a huge issue. Mm-hmm. Caps on political contributions is very important. Caps on gubernatorial appointees, what they can donate in. I think it's probably also time for us to start talking about revising the Texas Ethics Commission and giving them maybe some more teeth or having some more definitive options there. Most politicians or most of these candidates that are running will cringe at me saying that, but people just aren't held accountable in Texas in the same way. We don't even have the bare minimum standards that the FEC has. Mm-hmm. We need some people that are willing to go in there and start cleaning house, and I'm one of those people. I tell people all the time, I may not make best friends when I get to Austin, and I may not get sent back, but I'm young and I'll land on my feet. If I have to sacrifice my own seat to make sure we get fair districts, that's something I'll do. Mm-hmm. It's time to start sending some people down to Austin that have some integrity, and that starts when you start sending people like me and Julie Johnson and Nathan Johnson and Brandy Chambers. We've got some really great candidates that are running this year. We have Bill Brannon out in my district that's running. He's wonderful. Eston Williams is a great candidate. We have some really solid candidates that are interested in good government, that have good moral, ethical compasses, that I think we would be so well served.
Before the show, one of your comments was the Democrats don't seem to know what to do with rural districts.
Right.
We haven't been putting up candidates from rural districts, and Democrats are, just when you were talking about schools and we were talking about vouchers, I've never been for vouchers, but I wasn't even thinking about it. Yeah, you give somebody in a rural area a voucher, where are they going to spend it?
Right.
They don't have private schools. Hockaday doesn't have, Hockaday, their Canton branch.
Well, here's the thing.
They do not.
After 2010, we lost our rural progressives, right? And rural progressives are different than urban progressives. We may talk about things a lot more often like public schools and access to high-speed internet. I think that in rural communities, they want somebody that's got a good moral compass, got a good head on their shoulders, that's going to fight for them and shoot from the hip. It seems to me that when Democrats go to rural communities, all they talk about is ethanol, right? But when Republicans go to rural communities, they talk about their families, they talk about their values, talking about things that are going on in their lives. And, we did our part to lose rural voters as Democrats. That is our fault, right? We need to own it. And we need to go out there, figure out what challenges they're facing, and try to tackle it with them. Like I said, on every issue, we're not going to see eye to eye. But when Joe Blow out in Hopkins County has been working on his dairy farm all day, and he comes home and he is exhausted. He turns on the news and he feels like all the Democrats are doing are whining, and he doesn't ever see the Democrats up fighting for him, because maybe it's because of the news he watches, right? But I think we have an obligation to go out into those communities and talk and meet with people. We've been going to festivals, and we've been tearing this district up. We were at the Delta County Fair last weekend, and they hadn't seen a Democrat out there in 15 years probably. And, people come by the booth, a little wary at first. We sit, we talk to them. They say, you know what, I think you're on the money. I don't agree with you on a couple of things, but that's okay. We all have to work together because it is us against them. And when I say that, I'm not talking about Democrats and Republicans. I'm saying us, working folks, against this donor class that bankroll our elections, rob our schools, shut down our hospitals, and don't give us a fighting chance.
One of the things you said you're for is, first of all, we had a caller who said Deep Ellum has a bunch more unisex bathrooms also.
Awesome.
They're going in different areas. So I think that this whole bathroom bill nonsense has had some unintended consequences that are very positive. One of the issues you said that you're for is clean energy. That doesn't mean you're trying to shut down every single oil well and gas well and everything else, but we can add to the energy as we add to our population using clean energy. And you'd like to see some of that manufactured in your district.
Well, sure. I mean, look at states like West Virginia, right? They put all their eggs in the coal basket, and when coal tanked, their economy tanked.
But we're going to get all those coal jobs back.
Oh, right. They're all coming back. Thank goodness. At the end of the day, if we keep putting all of our eggs in the oil basket, where are we going to be whenever electric cars and, natural gas starts becoming it already is becoming a predominant
solar and
energy
wind.
source. And so what I believe is that we should start diversifying our energy economy in solar and wind. And I want those wind turbine manufacturing plants and those solar panel manufacturing plants right here in Senate District 2. And the question I ask people all the time is, who do you think is going to do that? Me? Or the guy who just got $750,000 from oil tycoons in West Texas, right? Our communities need real economic development that creates jobs for them to be able to feed their families, right?
And you're in no way saying that all of those oil wells in West Texas should be shut down.
I am not saying that. I think oil has done some great stuff for the Texas economy. But my district contains the county with the least number of natural resources in the state. We are not an oil district. And these school districts that are able to benefit from that oil money, that's wonderful. But we are not one of those. Right. And that manufacturing and those great union jobs, we need to bring them to our district because I think that the people of Senate District 2 deserve that, whether you're in Honey Grove or you're in Wills Point.
And diversifying energy is a good thing. Patty's driven a Prius for years and years. I have a coal-driven car.
I drive a Silverado.
I have a regular gas guzzler. But I was going to say, diversifying energy, hey, that can create jobs also.
Oh, for sure. And, the question to me becomes, do we start investing in that to create that in Texas, or do we wait for other states to do it, and then they will get on the manufacturing plants, right? We have got to be on the front. We have got to be on the forefront of economic development, and we are not. We have people that are living in the 1900s. That in Texas, let's shifting gears a little bit, but in Texas, you can't even register to vote online. There are 38 states that you can do that. You can't do it in Texas. Things as simple as registering to vote online in 2018, we don't even have that. Texas is so behind the curve, whether it's economic development or ethics reform.
And then when you go to vote, you can't show your student ID that's issued by the state.
It's so interesting to me.
Yes. We're almost out of time. We have 1 minute.
Oh, quick thing. On this day on Facebook, a year ago today, I was attending a Bob Hall town hall with you in Canton, Texas, and I said, State Senator Hall is once again filibustering his own town hall meeting. And that's what he did.
Oh, that was when he was refusing to answer questions.
And our guest today was Kendall Scudder. He's running for Senate District 2 against Bob Hall. It's an East Texas seat, goes from Dallas out into that 8 counties.
And thank y'all so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Come back again. And next week, I don't think we have our guests lined up. Definitely the week after. I met some kids from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. They're trying to get here for the NRA convention. And we'll see. But I told several of them, stay until 4 o'clock so that you can be on our show at 1. For all of us, have a great week. We'll see you next week.